Welcome to the Human Observation Lab. I am New York, your host and observer. Today, we find ourselves looking at a fascinating phenomenon that occurred recently in the financial markets.
Hi everyone, I'm Juan. So New York, I heard something pretty wild happened with the yen and oil prices. Something about a single statement causing billions of dollars to move.
Precisely. President Trump made a statement about delaying a potential attack on Iran by 5 days. Within moments, the yen surged against the dollar, and crude oil prices dropped significantly. What interests us is not the political content itself, but rather the psychological mechanism behind why humans collectively react so instantaneously to mere words.
That's pretty wild when you think about it. Like, nothing actually happened in the real world yet, right? No missiles were fired, no oil fields were destroyed, but money moved instantly.
Correct. And that is precisely what we will analyze today. Not the politics, but the psychology. Why do human beings respond so dramatically to statements alone? What cognitive structures are at play? Let us begin our observation. Let us first establish the facts. President Trump announced that he had instructed a delay of 5 days for a potential military action against Iran. This statement was made publicly, and the markets responded immediately.
And the yen just shot up? Like, why the yen specifically?
The yen is what economists call a safe haven currency. When geopolitical risks decrease, investors often move their money into currencies perceived as stable. The Japanese yen has historically filled this role. When Trump indicated a delay in military action, the perceived risk decreased, and market behavior shifted accordingly.
And oil prices dropped too, right?
Yes. New York crude oil temporarily fell to the $84 range. The logic is straightforward. If military conflict in the Middle East is delayed or potentially avoided, the risk of oil supply disruption decreases. Prices adjust based on these expectations.
But here's what confuses me. Trump just said some words. Nothing actually changed in reality. Why does everyone just believe it and act on it?
That is the central question. And to understand it, we must examine the cognitive mechanisms humans use to process information under uncertainty. But before we go deeper, there is another layer to this story.
Oh, what else happened?
There was also a statement regarding diplomatic communications. Trump claimed that the U.S. was in discussions with Iran. However, Iran officially denied this, stating they were not in negotiations with the United States.
Wait, so someone's not telling the truth? Or are they just seeing things differently?
That ambiguity is precisely what creates market volatility. When there is a gap between statements and verified reality, humans must make decisions based on incomplete information. How they respond to that gap reveals much about human psychology.
And there was something about the Japanese Prime Minister too, right? Something about a Donald-only statement?
Yes. The Japanese Prime Minister, when explaining diplomatic communications, used the phrase Donald only, which created some confusion. The Prime Minister later clarified that this was in support of American leadership. This too demonstrates how statements require interpretation, and interpretation creates psychological responses.
So basically, everyone's trying to figure out what's real and what's not, and in the meantime, markets are going crazy?
Precisely. Now let us examine why this happens from a psychological perspective. The first concept we must understand is what psychologists call uncertainty avoidance. This refers to the degree to which people feel uncomfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty.
So like, when people don't know what's going to happen, they get stressed?
Essentially, yes. Research in behavioral economics has shown that humans generally prefer a certain negative outcome over an uncertain one. This is called ambiguity aversion. When faced with uncertainty, people have a strong drive to reduce it by taking action.
So when Trump makes a statement, even if it's just words, people feel like they have more certainty. Like they know what's happening now?
That is part of it. But there is another mechanism at play, the availability heuristic. This is a mental shortcut where people judge the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. Trump's statement made the possibility of conflict immediately available in people's minds, while simultaneously offering a delay.
I'm not sure I fully get that one.
Allow me to explain more simply. When you hear about a plane crash on the news, you might suddenly feel that flying is dangerous, even though statistically it remains very safe. The information is available in your mind, so it feels more significant. Similarly, Trump's statement made certain scenarios feel more real and immediate to traders.
Oh, I get it now. So it's not about what's actually likely to happen, it's about what feels important right now because someone just talked about it?
Correct. And this connects to another principle, herd behavior or information cascades. When people are uncertain, they look to others for cues on how to behave. If some traders start selling or buying based on a statement, others follow, assuming those first movers know something they don't.
So it's like a domino effect? One person reacts and then everyone else just follows?
In simplified terms, yes. This is amplified in the age of algorithmic trading, where computer systems are programmed to respond to certain keywords and phrases instantly. The psychological mechanisms of humans have been encoded into trading algorithms, creating feedback loops.
Wait, so even computers are basically acting on human psychology now?
In a sense. The algorithms are designed by humans to respond to market signals that themselves are driven by human psychology. It creates an interesting recursive structure where human cognitive biases are automated and accelerated. Now let us examine another fascinating aspect, the gap between Trump's claims and Iran's denial. Trump stated there were discussions. Iran stated there were not. Both cannot be simultaneously true in a conventional sense.
Right, that's pretty confusing. So who's lying?
From an analytical perspective, the question of who is lying is less interesting than examining why this gap exists and how people respond to it. There is a psychological phenomenon called motivated reasoning, where people interpret information in ways that support their existing beliefs or interests.
So people just believe whatever fits what they already think.
The tendency exists. Supporters of Trump might interpret Iran's denial as posturing or face-saving. Critics might interpret Trump's claim as bluster or fabrication. The same information is processed differently based on pre-existing psychological frameworks.
And I guess markets just have to deal with this somehow?
Indeed. Markets must operate under conditions of what economists call asymmetric information and radical uncertainty. No one has complete information, and yet decisions must be made. This leads to what we might call probability-based thinking among experienced traders.
What does that mean exactly?
Rather than asking, is this true or false, probability-based thinking asks, what is the likelihood this is true, and what are the consequences if I'm wrong? This is a more sophisticated cognitive approach that acknowledges uncertainty rather than trying to eliminate it.
That sounds really hard to do though. Most people just want to know what's actually happening.
And that desire for certainty is precisely what creates the psychological vulnerability we observe. The discomfort of not knowing drives people to act as if they do know. This is what we might call the certainty illusion.
The certainty illusion? That's a really interesting way to put it. So we're all kind of fooling ourselves into feeling like we understand things?
In many cases, yes. The human mind creates narratives to make sense of incomplete information. These narratives feel like understanding, but they are often just stories we tell ourselves to reduce anxiety. Let us now consider what these psychological mechanisms mean for society at large. We live in an era where statements from influential figures can instantly affect global systems.
Yeah, it feels like everything moves so fast now. One tweet and billions of dollars shift.
This acceleration has important implications. The time between stimulus and response has compressed dramatically. In the past, news traveled slowly, allowing time for reflection and verification. Now, the pressure to react immediately exploits our cognitive vulnerabilities.
So we're making decisions faster than we can actually think about them?
In essence, The psychologist Daniel Kahneman distinguished between System 1 thinking, which is fast and intuitive, and System 2 thinking, which is slow and analytical. Modern information environments force us into constant System 1 mode.
That doesn't sound great for making good decisions.
It creates systematic vulnerabilities. Those who understand these psychological mechanisms can potentially exploit them. A well-timed statement can move markets before anyone has time to verify its accuracy.
Is there anything people can do about this?
Awareness is the first step. Understanding that our minds have these built-in tendencies allows us to pause and question our reactions. The practice of asking, "What do I actually know?" versus "What do I feel?" can create valuable space for reflection.
So just slowing down and asking better questions?
Precisely. Additionally, understanding that markets and media amplify certain psychological tendencies can help us recognize when we are being swept along by collective emotions rather than independent analysis. To summarize our observations today, we examined how a single political statement triggered immediate market reactions, and we identified several psychological mechanisms at play: uncertainty avoidance, the availability heuristic, herd behavior, motivated reasoning, and the certainty illusion.
It's kind of amazing when you think about it. Billions of dollars moved because of words, and it all traces back to how our brains are wired.
Indeed. And these mechanisms are not flaws in human cognition. They are adaptations that served our ancestors well in different environments. The challenge is that our cognitive systems evolved for a world very different from the one we now inhabit.
So we're kind of using old software for new problems?
An apt metaphor. By understanding these mechanisms, we can begin to update our mental approaches. Not by eliminating our psychological tendencies, which is impossible, but by recognizing them and creating systems that account for them.
Well, this definitely gave me a lot to think about. Next time I see markets moving on news, I'll try to pause and ask myself what's actually happening versus what I'm just assuming.
That is the goal of our observation. To see the structures behind the events, and in doing so, to understand ourselves a little better. Thank you for joining us in the Human Observation Lab. Until next time, keep observing.